So this one is for the girls. And the reason I'm saying it's for women is right now about 80% men to 20% women are watching any videos I seem to do talking about the grand solar minimum. But if you've been with me, you know I'm talking old and cold and bold. And so that's what we're doing here. So my question for you today is, how do you like your information? How do you really think you change? By a fact, by a fear, or by a story? That's my question today. So I'm going to take a deep breath, in 4, hold 4, exhale 4, and see you on the other side. So I made a video just for men. This one is really more for women, although it applies to everybody. But the reason I want to, as I mentioned, it's mostly men who watch any kind of videos regarding climate or the grand solar minimum. Not that you guys aren't out there that are girls like me trying to figure out what's going on. But I wanted to do a little bit of a story. I wanted to talk about a little bit of a fear. And I also wanted to give you a fact. And technically, I've kind of done all three, but we're going to regroup. And the reason is that, you know, the fear was this, not this book, but this picture that I saw in Hurricane Harvey. And that's a bunch of women sitting in a nursing home with water up to their waist, reading books and knitting, just nonchalant. But they couldn't get up. They couldn't move. They couldn't help themselves. They couldn't protect themselves. That, to me, is a reality. That's a fear. The fact, like I've shared with you once before, 80% of people over 50 already have some type of chronic disease process going on, meaning heart, lung, diabetes, arthritis, things like that. Now, the story, I read this little book, Two Old Women. It's an Alaska legend of betrayal, courage, and survival. And I'm not going to do the whole story now. I'm just going to give you one tiny piece because I really liked it, even though it's tiny. Can you see that? It's a tiny little book, but it's a really good story for those of us in today's world to sink it in. And I don't know how to get information in to actually create change. That's something each of us struggle with, but it isn't fact and it isn't fear. It's usually a story that gets it deep within. And so the story starts out, this is hundreds of years ago. It's a story that's been passed down through multiple generations. And the story begins with a very cold, severe winter. The tribe is starving. They need to keep moving. And there's two old women, 75 and 80, who are very hard to keep up with everybody. They have to be carried. They have to be fed. They can't move as quickly, so the tribe has to make a decision. What are we going to do about these two old women? Because we can't survive and take care of them at the same time. Now, what got me thinking about that was I started listening to Jared Diamond, who does a lot of work with traditional or indigenous societies, and when he's done a recent book on that, and one of the things he talks about in traditional tribal societies, the three choices for older people were: you walked away, you left them behind, you killed them, or you stayed and took care of them. Now, as agriculture and domesticated animals took place and tribes didn't have to move as much, they weren't nomadic, then there was more taking care of the older people than the walking away. So those were the three options, and that's what this tribe chose to do, is they chose to walk away. Now, they didn't kill them. Sometimes people killed their loved ones so they wouldn't suffer. They left them to die. Then that got me thinking about, what do we do today? And our choices now for our caretaking of our older people is we walk away, we just don't get involved. We put them someplace to die, which is some kind of skilled nursing facility or some kind of care, or we leave them at home to die. Or 3, we take care of them. So that got me thinking, not much has changed. And one of the reasons I started talking about aging or getting older is that the statistics are kind of terrifying for the future, and there really aren't enough caretakers to take care of all the older people as this baby boomer generation moves forward. But I think the three choices will remain pretty much the same. I mean, either you're going to not get involved in your parents' caretaking, you are going to get involved, because I don't know how much care placement will be available, but that's something time will tell. But now we've got a whole other component in terms of the climate and the weather changing. And the reason that's important is the other thing we saw down in Florida is 8 people dying in the nursing home because they lost power because they didn't have air conditioning. They weren't able to keep the equipment alive and running. So as our climate changes, we're going to have more demands on our infrastructure, which will affect how we are cared for. So I'm bringing all this up because my goal is to really start planting the seed, not to create fear, not to just quote statistics at you, but especially for women, because you are the caretakers. You are the group that lives the longest. Most women will outlive their husbands. And the reality is that when we get old and frail as women, society doesn't really care about us. Now, that's just a bottom line reality check, whether we want to acknowledge that or not. There's always exceptions, but there's a saying that says at 18, you think everybody's looking at you. At 40, you realize nobody's looking at you. At 65, you wish somebody was looking at you. And I'm sure, ladies, you know that experience where I'm doing that right now, where you start to become invisible to certain people. It's weird, but it's happening. So this is just real for us as women. As we get older, we count less, we're more invisible, and we have a scarier, more chaotic future than we've ever had in our recorded history. Not as bad as tribal culture that were nomads a long time ago, but it's going to be very different than what our parents and our grandparents experienced. So this is my first step into talking to the women about this. And so I didn't want to leave you with nothing. I'm going to leave you with the simplest place to start if you haven't started. And that's 2 things I'm going to recommend. There's going to be links below. And that is get your feet working and get your posture straight. Because the most important part of being healthy as you age is being mobile. And what people don't realize is if they sit a lot, they lose their function in their feet. A lot of the neuropathy is just because we don't use our feet anymore. And our posture continues to get worse as we get older, making us more prone to falling, breaking a hip, going in the nursing home. So this video is for women. It's not the last video. We're going to talk about this story again. If you get a chance to read this little book, I had found it at the library. I was pretty impressed. I highly recommend it. I'll have the link below on that too. So I'm going to say goodbye. That is our little pitch for today, just to get you thinking, hope your feet moving. And this is one of the reasons why I say this, and that is one more deep breath for the road, as I hope you will rise with the sun in your eyes, love in your heart, feet firmly on the ground, barefoot if you can, as together we walk on Survival Road, one day at a time. Live free, die wild, my friends, and we'll see you next time.